I started joining some Christian women prayer groups on Facebook. I had just finished the book Spiritual Mothering by Susan Hunt, and I was looking for a mentor. But instead, I found some things I wasn't expecting. I was seeing prayers for divorces, custody battles, and broken marriages. But the one question that really stuck out to me was, how do I find my purpose? I would suggest this. If you're a mother with young children, then in this season of your life, your purpose is mother. And if you're married, a wife as well. That's plenty of purpose for this stage of your life. If you're like me, two grown children, a borderline teenager, and a 5-year-old, you're kind of itching for a purpose that's bigger than wife and mother. For me, it was experiences that were opening the doorway purpose. I'll explain a little further. I had an affair about 16 years ago. I had always been the victim of other people's bad decisions, and this time I made one of my own. I had to experience God's forgiveness. I was on my knees thinking that I had done the worst thing possible. I begged God to forgive me. I felt Him wash away the guilt and shame right then and there. And when that took place, I was able to forgive everyone that had ever wronged me, understanding the grace of God. My husband went to our church about my one-time infidelity and spoke to the assistant pastor who told my husband to get a divorce. That was the advice that has always angered my husband, even to this day. Even back then, I didn't realize the impact that statement would have on the purpose for my life. In video 8, I mentioned a vision for building churches with a strong foundation, biblically. Listening to these women so willing to throw away marriages like they're nothing, based on feelings, neglect, pornography, and very few based on addictions or abuse as reasons, I felt that this calling is even more critical. I feel that the churches are letting people down. It's more than just being an evangelist, checking the body count every week for the number of people saved or the number of baptisms being performed. As a pastor, you need to count divorces in your church, suicides that could have been prevented, addictions, teen pregnancies, and abortions. Do you really think that God won't hold you accountable for reasons like these as well? One pattern I'm seeing is the lack of equipping and educating. No one is reading. When we live in an information society, I'm shocked how many people don't read, how uneducated our Christian women are. One woman didn't even know what different denominations there were. We don't have an excuse to wing it in marriage, parenting, or as pastors of churches. I have personally felt God's anger and pain over the treatment of our family alone by churches. It has pained God that we educated ourselves and our children, and yet there's no place for us in a church because we see past the con game. It's really a sad reality. What I feel is the real key issue is pastors who are under the misguided notion that they are to evangelize. Nothing more, nothing less. Evangelists are to bring people to God. That's their position. Pastors are not only to bring people to God, but to baptize and equip their congregations so that divorce, abortions, suicides, and things that our society is destroying need to become issues that are being addressed, not silently accepted in order to have a following. In our family, divorce is not an option. Since I started reading Kingdom Marriage by Tony Evans, he points out some very interesting things. The church exists to provide a sounding board in conflict situations. That's what Tony believes churches are there for. We left 2 churches because the pastors didn't know how to resolve conflict. And what frightens me even more is one of them actually counsels couples. We have so much information out there available to us. We just have to find it. Focus on the family life, and marriage today. Focus on families and taking your marriage seriously. We are reading Kingdom Marriage, but we're also reading DNA of Relationships by Gary Smalley with our son and his girlfriend. The book mentions that the Smalley Institute, which does marriage intensives, has a 93% success rate. Kirk Cameron has been doing the campfire segments for a while, and now that's turned into courses for marriage, parenting, and devotionals. It has been recommended by a certified counselor as a great resource. Right now, he's even offering it for free for a period of time, and you can find it on Facebook. For your purpose, I recommend The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren and Pathway to Purpose for Women by Katie Brazelton. I suggest looking at all this material and building your own personal library. My husband and I started over our 6.5 year courtship reading, listening to focus on the family and family life. We read books. I remember doing an exercise early in our relationship where we had to list things that we would change about the other person. I had about half a page for David, and I watched in horror as David kept writing and then turned the page over for more space. I looked over his list, overwhelmed at the things I would have to work on and feeling absolutely defeated. But it came down to lack of equipping me properly from my parents. David was very gentle in explaining that to me and letting me know that it wasn't my fault. He jokes about having to raise a daughter at the age of 18, but it was so very true. I have taken that experience to heart with me as I continue to tackle the things I wasn't equipped with. I honestly don't know where that list is. I'm sure that we still have it somewhere in our boxes of keepsakes, but I know I have conquered quite a bit on that list and will continue to conquer it until the day I die. The point is, we're all fallible creatures and we need to invest in our relationships. God doesn't give up on us, and we can't be so hasty in giving up on our marriages, our children, or our congregations. We must be willing to never leave God out of our marriages, but rather allow God to be the definition of our marriages. And that's a quote by Tony Evans from Kingdom Marriage. Living a Christian life is set out to glorify God. It's not made for cowards. We are to be courageous in our lives, knowing that God will never leave us nor forsake us. This week, if you are struggling, I urge you to check into these sites I mentioned. Start building your own home library of marriage, parenting, men, women, and Bible studies. Do not rely on your own pastor or other people to educate you on being a Christian. Take that initiative and start learning about what your Creator had in mind when He made marriages, parenting, and churches.